Get the perspective now of the opposition. You can see we've been joined by the Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer, Mel Stride. Mel, morning to you. Thanks very much for being with us. I have to talk to you about what we saw in the Commons yesterday. It was an extraordinary moment. The Chancellor visibly upset. Have you been in touch? Have you spoken to her?
No, I haven't spoken to her. I sent her a message afterwards just to say that I felt for her and that I hoped that she was OK. I mean, it was very distressing to see it, actually. And, of course, I was just opposite her on the opposition benches. Yeah, a very difficult time for her.
Did you guys...
I hope she's OK.
We've been told it's a personal matter, as you will have seen from the Secretary of State for Health. Were you guys aware of what was going on?
No, I didn't know that she was as upset as she was until she came in and sat down on the bench opposite me, and it was immediately obvious and obviously quite upsetting to see it, actually.
I mean, obvious to you, perhaps, maybe not to the leader of the opposition. She was quite forceful on him when, you know, it was quite clear. And Chris Philp was there jabbing his finger as well.
Well, she's there to hold the Prime Minister to account, and I think clearly it was right that Kemi pressed very hard on issues around the economy and the complete chaos that we've seen in the last 24 to 48 hours around the welfare bill.
But on a human level, I mean, you can see that she was really upset and crying. Maybe just pull back on that moment.
Well, I think she got that balance about right, because at the end of the day, she is there to say to Keir Starmer, look, there are very big, important things in play here. People's livelihoods, you know, their cost of living, you know, how prosperous people are feeling or otherwise. And yet we've got this government that is mismanaging the public finances. They've U-turned on winter fuel, which is an unfunded commitment of £1.25 billion. The U-turn now on welfare, another £4 billion plus. That's going to have to be paid for, and it's most likely to be paid for by higher taxes in the autumn. So the point that Kemi is rightly making is that, you know, it's hardworking people up and down this country who are already under quite a lot of pressure, who are going to ultimately pay the price of Labour's poor choices.
We've been told there will be financial consequences. Pat McFadden, sitting right where you are, told us that yesterday. We're not clear what those consequences will be. I wonder if you've had time to reflect on what we saw in the markets after the Chancellor was seen to be crying in the chamber. The pound and gilts looked... pound slumped and gilts went up as it looked as if she might be out. But that was just... Isn't that a sign that she's respected and trusted by the markets? They were scared that she wasn't going to be in the job anymore.
No, it's a sign of the markets taking a view on how safe it is to lend to our country, what kind of risk premium they want to price in. And what they've seen is a government that's come in, taxed businesses up to the hilt, destroyed growth, borrowed a lot of money, spent a lot of money, driven up inflation, kept interest rates higher for longer than would otherwise have been the case, and is now piling up the debt burden on this country. The servicing costs on which, Kamali, is about £100 billion a year. That's twice what we spend on defence. And then we're now heading into the autumn, once again, under a government that has almost certainly blown all its fiscal headroom.
But Mel, you'll know that they didn't do all that in 1 year, did they? A lot of that was put in place by previous government for 14 years.
We did go through a small matter of COVID, where we had to support millions of jobs up and down. Well, it shrank the economy by 10%, and most people at the time were saying that unemployment would go up to levels we'd never seen before in our country. So I think it's fair to say that that comes with a price, of course, of supporting the economy in that way. And we also supported the economy when inflation spiked around the Ukraine-Russia war. And we were right to have done that. It was £400 billion worth of support that the economy got at that time. The alternative would have been far worse.
Just on the markets again and the Chancellor, a fund manager at Fidelity said that investors were fearful that if she were replaced, there'd be greater risks for the government's fiscal rules, that they would be changed or ditched. And an ally of hers said that gilt investors see her as a bulwark against excessive government borrowing. So her remaining in place is good news for the markets.
Well, it's not good news for the markets that we've got the backdrop that we've got, which is a government that's lost control of the public finances, that has previously already blown its fiscal headroom against its targets, that is racking up unfunded spending commitments in the order of multiple billions, and is heading into the autumn quite probably now going to have to put up taxes. None of that's good. Now, the fact that there may be different views on whether it's appropriate for the Chancellor to stay or not is something that sits on top of that disastrous situation that Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves have created because of the choices that they've taken.
They're going to be announcing this huge change to the NHS today. Needed reform, wouldn't you agree?
So look, the NHS certainly needs reform. One of the things that it doesn't need is what this government did, which is come in and blow £26 billion on the NHS without having a clear plan as to how they would drive up productivity.
Well, they're saying they've got waiting lists down. They've managed to resolve the strike action.
So, well, there's also balloting going on around further strike actions, so that's not a problem that's gone away. The main point here, though, is that with the NHS, you need not just to have a plan, and let's see what that plan is later today, but they had 14 years in opposition and a year in government to put that plan together. The question that you have to ask is, can they deliver on it? And what we've seen with the U-turn on winter fuel, the U-turn, for example, on national inquiry into grooming gangs that Kemi and others pressed so hard for, what we've seen with the U-turn on this welfare bill, where the bill was completely gutted, whilst the second reading was in progress, actually. Quite an extraordinary event. I've never seen anything like it. That does not speak to delivery and having a grip. And if you're going to get the reforms in the NHS to work, you need delivery and grip. And this government, I'm afraid, doesn't have either.
Look, you make that argument forcefully, and you guys have been making that argument for weeks, but you'll know that just a week or so ago, there was that big MRP poll that found the Conservatives down on 46 seats. I mean, despite you making these arguments, Mel Stride, and you make them well, the public just aren't listening to the Tories at the moment.
So look, there's no doubt we had a very punishing result in the general election and in the local election. And it will take time for my party to get that traction back and that hearing with the electorate. So what we must do now, as I'm doing on your programme, is hold this government ruthlessly to account. That's what the British electorate sent us to the Commons to do, to express our Conservative values, to come forward with policy along the way as and when appropriate.
Okay,
but at the same time, do the hard work of coming up with the right policy platform for the next general election, which will address the fundamental challenges that our country has. A radical rewiring of the economy, getting taxes down, getting the size of the state down, looking at our skills, getting welfare under control in the way that this government
has. All great ambitions. All very
important things. But it will take time to address those fundamental
had you gone
tough challenges.
The other way around and put your policies in place, then you wouldn't find yourself languishing in these
Well, we've come forward with a number of policies. We've said that we will reverse the changes this government brought into business property relief, agricultural property relief, the farms tax. We will reverse. We would, for example, have a situation where it's much more difficult for people that come here to get indefinite leave to remain as part of addressing net migration, illegal migration. Also disapplying the Human Rights Act when it comes to deporting those that come to our shores illegally. Lots of tough policy that we've come out with. The fact of the matter is, you're right, we're low in the polls, and part of that is it will take time to build that dialogue and that connection with the electorate, but we will get there because we're very clear on our principles and we will come up with the right solutions for our country.
We will see. Mel Stride, thank you very much for being with us this morning. Good morning to you.